it's amazing to me what we are asked of as to be human. It's just, it's beyond belief what is asked of us as human beings in terms of suffering. And we can't say, oh, you can't suffer. Oh, no, you don't have to suffer. You have to say, obviously some people they can prescribe something or they can do something.
Yeah.
But ultimately, as a human being, as a fellow human being, and as a healer, ultimately our great ability is simply to be, and to be very present, to be as present as possible.
Welcome to another episode of
As
Woo As
You
Want with Celine,
Jeremiah,
and our guest today,
Winslow Eliot.
Yay!
So excited to have you on, Winslow.
Yes.
It's February 21st, 2022. Starting to feel the sun is setting a little later, right? Like, things are slowly coming out of the cocoon, I think.
I think a little bit. It feels pretty, well, actually, it's a lie. It's been really cold the last few days.
Yeah, the weather's been confusing. But we hope everyone's doing well. And we're so excited to have our guest today. And I'm going to let Celine take it away from here.
Yes. So Winslow Eliot is a metaphysical practitioner and also an author. And I first met Winslow, I guess like two years ago. I'm not sure. In my foundation hand analysis course. And now I'm in an intensive, and she's the co-teacher, moderator, guide. So we see each other often. I always make a lot of dumb jokes in class. Everybody's very serious. But so we're just so excited to have you on. And you do tarot, psychic stuff, right? And writing. So is that a good introduction? Did I cover it? Are there things that I didn't say that you do?
Probably.
Okay.
I'm so old. There's probably a lot that I've done and do, but for the purposes of woo-woo, I think you probably covered it.
Okay.
Although I do have a lot of modalities. I do astrology as well, and the word psychic. I know I'm referred to as a clairvoyant, but it's a very misunderstood word, I feel.
Yeah.
Actually, I did write a paper on the difference between psychism and mysticism, because especially when I was working at this very, very high-end spa resort, people wanted a psychic reading, and I felt that it doesn't really serve them to come in for an hour for a psychic reading, the way psychics very often do it, which is just to tell them what they see. And they would just come in and say, just tell me what you see. And there'd be no exchange of energy and no healing aspect as a metaphysician, where physicians really, it's just a different style. Mm-hmm. And it really bothered me. And there were stories of that they would come in, I think, really wanting to be healed from, of psychics having said things to them that were very disturbing.
Yeah.
And especially, as I've said in our palmistry class, especially with palmistry, which is such a beautiful metaphysical modality, but if it's misused by people just saying what they see, which is not necessarily true. It's just what they're seeing. And people are muddied. Psychics are muddied. They might be seeing somebody else, or they might be making it up in their heads. So I don't really call myself a psychic.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was having a conversation with somebody about the word psychic, and in your book, Be Still, which Jer, did you finish that too? Or yes.
I'm holding it up for those who are watching YouTube.
So amazing. You guys should definitely check it out. But what I found so fascinating and like inspirational was the idea that people come and they're seeking to know something about the future or about their partners or, et cetera. But to really ask somebody, what do they really want to know? What is like the core that's, fueling the question? And then with that process, the answer unfolds. And so, I just thought that was amazing because that's essentially what it is, right?
Because they know this is the beauty, and this is the beauty of stillness, I feel, is that we know who we are. We know our direction. We know our heart's longing.
Yeah.
We really do. It's just that we don't think we do, or we get in our own way, or we have programmed responses, triggers, buttons, all these endless things. So to clear that away, and that's what I feel I do as a clairvoyant. It's not that I see your future, it's that I clear the clutter and clear you so that you know. And I tell people, I never tell you anything you don't already know. Yeah. It's that I give you glasses almost to be able to see clearly, or take off these glasses that make it darker for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool.
I was going to say, Winslow, I feel like you're being very modest because I looked at your biography and you have quite an illustrious career.
She's low-key Powerballs.
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll link your website, but anyone could go and check out your biography. And you've lived quite an amazing life and have accomplished so much. I mean, you have a PhD, an ordained minister. You're a writer of several published books. So, it's just been a thing to see. And I was so excited to meet you because, I don't know you, but I was lucky enough to read the book. Celine lent it to me. And it's just, I really have to tell you, I highly encourage if people are interested in this kind of work, in metaphysical work, Winslow, I just feel like you're such an amazing voice. And your words carried so much healing in them. There are a lot of times where you read books and it just is coming from like a cerebral place. And you do such an amazing job of carrying a lot of scientific integrity and conveying that. And, you have a lot of citations of scientific studies or social scientific studies, but then also bringing in this what we call woo-woo, like metaphysical of looking at things. And I don't know, I highly encourage this book for anyone who's interested in reading it. And yeah, so I just wanted to get that there because it was just funny at the beginning. I was like, this woman is badass.
Definitely.
Well, it's so funny, this combination, this integration of woo-woo and science. It's so interesting to me when people come and say, I had the craziest experience. You'll never believe what happened. I dreamed about something and then it happened, or so-and-so called me and then such and such happened. These amazing woo-woo types of things that I'm sure you've heard stories. And to me, it is scientific in the sense of energy. I mean, as you know from my book, I mean, we are energy and these things happen, and woo-woo is real. It's not something that's made up. And that's what I think in your podcasts, in these people that you've interviewed and talked with that I've listened to, it feels that's what they're saying. Let's integrate into our lives something that is so valuable, so healing. I love that you said the book itself is healing, because to me, if you stay up here with this work, it's meaningless. Or if you stay in not doing it physically with your body, it's meaningless. It's everything needs to be integrated.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was also cool the way that you incorporated the tarot into each of those sessions. And, because I mean, it just seems like there's all these different modalities that you're just bringing in, and it just seems so holistic and integrative and like just transformative, you know? I don't know. I even emailed you about it. I was like, this was the best book ever.
Well, I'm curious, Winslow. I want to dive deep into the book, but before we get to that, I'm curious to know a little bit more about your path. I read your biography, but were you raised that way? Were you kind of raised with this openness to, you know, energy and experience? Or is that something that kind of came about after your years of study and travel?
I would say I was definitely raised with it. My parents were both metaphysicians and world travelers and writers. And I always really admired people who came to this from a very traditional or even a closed background, you know, people who were raised in a cult or something and then found freedom. I just always am so admiring of people who really overcame struggle to experience revelation. Mm. But one of the things I remember my mother telling me was that I could go farther having had that freedom from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I do have to acknowledge that to myself and not you know, it's a little bit like privilege on a spiritual level to have that kind of free thinking and free thinkers and so much exposure, especially to books and to great thinkers, to great people they knew. So they met and they cared about so many amazing thinkers. So my parents are definitely, they raised us to be part of this woo-woo world, no question. Yeah. And they were both rebels. You know, my dad was one of the first of the Eliots who came here back in the 1600s not to go to Harvard. He rebelled in the 30s. And as you saw from my bio, I have a great whatever who was president of Harvard for many, many decades. So it was a big rebellion. He went and was with the Navajo Indians for a summer and did things in the 30s that many people wouldn't from his background.
Wow.
And my mother too had a very unusual background. So in a way I rebelled, and I think that was part of my rebellion was to go into I didn't do this metaphysical work for many decades. I mean, I did it for fun and I always loved it, but it was certainly not an idea that I could make a living at it. And I wanted to write. I've always wanted to write. I always did write. I never said I wanted to be a writer. I was always a writer from when I was very young. And I'm sure my parents always writing was part of that. But I didn't want to do metaphysical work the way they did. I wrote romance novels. That was I was going to be a bestseller and successful and I didn't want to struggle like they did to make ends meet, you know, because obviously their life wasn't material. It wasn't materially focused. So I'm glad that, I mean, I was fairly successful. I was successful enough to live on my writing, but it wasn't like I was a big hit. It sort of came and went, and it's one of those things I'm very grateful for because it sent me into so many paths. And I've had a lot of different lives, I feel, including family and including teaching high school students and a lot of travels of my own. And I'm ready for stillness. I think this time for me is I finally feel as though I've come into my real passion. Is this integrating it all, and it becomes not so much a path or a direction or an accomplishment. I think I've lived so fully with having to accomplish so much, and this is different. This feels very different this time in my life.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Oh. Yeah, and you know, it's something in the book that I really appreciated too. You talk about some of your clients, you know, some of the readings that you've done, and I'm wondering if I should backtrack first. Maybe let's talk about the thesis of the book, and then we'll go into that. But just for if people want to get oriented. So, Winslow, would you like to just? And by the way, if you don't want to talk about the book, we don't have to talk about the book.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm happy talking about anything your heart desires.
So yeah, so why don't you give us just like a brief like I don't know, synopsis isn't the right word, but just like what's the thesis statement of Be Still?
Oh gosh, I forget. But I know that it was about this sense that or experience and practice that I realized and recognized and wanted to write about, that we can get to this experience of stillness through the four elements. That's the core of our being, is earth, air, water, and fire. And it's at the core of every metaphysical practice in the world, every spiritual practice, everything comes down to that. We are those four elements. We are matter. As human beings, we are those four bits of matter. And I can go into each one if you want, or if you want me to go further.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
So physical well-being is earth. Earth in tarot, in pentacles, in astrology, they're the earth signs. It's so real. It's our favorite element in many ways, because it's so tangible. It's our senses, our five senses. I feel one of the most profoundly simple ways of getting to stillness, especially if one is struggling with ill health, is through nature. Because we're all one, we're all connected on a very, very deep energetic level. And we know that plants are, basically when people say that's not true, that trees talk to each other or whatever, we know it's true. We know that maybe there hasn't been enough research or proof around it, and that will come. But intuitively, we know that these plants are connected, and more studies are being done to show it, and that our energy affects plants. I mean, there's just been so much research being done around this, and I do feel it's an enormous resource that we have, and as I say in my book, one of the beautiful things about being in nature, looking at a flower or a tree, or looking at even the sky or the stars, these things, all they're being asked to do is to be what they are. Mm. And it reminds us that that's all that we're being asked, is to be who we are. Nothing more, nothing less. And that means that you can't do anything wrong. You can't be bad. You're just always trying to be better, more than, improve, be less of something, and find our own inner, everything is who we are, but we have to recognize it and become more of that so we don't get off course. So that's earth. And so then air, I mean, there's more, but I could go on and on. Let me just go through these quickly. Air is our thought, is our mental process. In the tarot, it's the swords. It's the air elements are very connected with our thinking process. The astrology signs, Libra and Gemini and Aquarius are very mental beings. And my research or my explorations showed me a different way to become still in our thoughts, because I'm a meditator, and I know that that's the best way. I mean, it's like if you don't meditate, your mental muscles are going to get flabby. Basically, it's like if you don't work out, you're going to get flabby. And if you don't meditate, your mind chatter does get out of control, especially in the middle of the night. If you don't have a resource to go to, breath or whatever, just focusing on breath, and that's all I mean by meditating, taking a walk and focus. It's really practicing focusing, mindfulness. But I also found out that this paradoxical thinking, to actually you go deeper than that and actually try to think of two things at the same time, is an amazing revelation in a sense. It's like a woo-woo where you actually can be still because it's not, it's in a way, it's not possible. And it's how Einstein describes light, that light is both a wave and a particle. I mean, physicists do, not just him. But it's not possible. It's not possible to be in motion and a noun, to be a verb and a noun at the same time. It's not possible. And yet it is. And this is where I feel we come to our own understanding of we are both a noun, Celine, Jeremiah, Winslow. We are who we are. But actually we're becoming Celine. We're becoming Jeremiah. We're becoming Winslow. And it's both at the same time. And if we can get to that, we become stillness. And it's both stillness then becomes both a verb and a noun. And it becomes so alive. And somehow that mental air becomes absolutely clear. And this is the great gift of our thinking, is that it's objective, it's clear, it helps us not be at the mercy of passion and anger and road rage or whatever. We can think like, okay, wait a minute, calm down. Our thoughts are our allies. They're beautiful, beautiful brain that we have if it's used properly and wisely. Otherwise, it's our master, and it's not where it belongs. And then water, this beautiful element of, I call it love, wisdom, intuition. I'm a Taoist at heart, and the Taoist sense of if we can get in the flow of our intuition, of our love, of our feeling with whatever we do, it's another kind of a mindfulness, but it doesn't take so much attention. It's more surrender. It's really this idea of surrender, and it's one of the hardest things, I think, for our Western civilization anyway, but this particular culture has permeated the world, really. This idea that we have to accomplish, stand up for, manifest, make do, be better, make more. It's really time to surrender. Much more of that flow. And then the fire I found very, very interesting. I mean, a lot of this was, I wouldn't say channeled, but I didn't know what I was doing, really. It was such it talk about flow. I mean, this particular project poured through me, and I think I was done with everything within 18 months, which is pretty amazing. Wow. I do work pretty obsessively, so it was from early in the morning till evening. That's all I was doing. It was very unhealthy in many ways, but it was kind of a flow. And the fire, which is normally the wands or these fire elements of creativity and transformation, came to me with this extraordinary clarity that these 5 initiations of our experience that we all have, it's not, the 2 things that we can depend on are not death and taxes. It's actually these 5 initiations, which is birth, adolescence, falling in love, sickness, and death. And I go through each one of them because each of these phases happen over and over again. It's not as though, and for example, I think adolescence is one of the most underrated initiations in our experience. We treat our teenagers as though they're college kids, and everything is about either sports or academics. And this development of their astral body, their emotional body and social body, especially during these last couple of years where they had no social life pretty much.
Yeah.
They're bereft. And we need to go through that more than once. I don't think it can happen, especially in this new culture of education. I don't think it's actually new. I think teenagers have always been very misunderstood. They're like this big insect. It's like Kafka's Metamorphosis, where the parents come in the room and there's a cockroach there on the bed. That's how teenagers are kind of seen. And they're these beautiful beings, butterflies in a chrysalis, and if they're not protected, and we have to do that quests in tarot. The knights are teenagers very often. That's how they're seen. They're on a quest. They're these idealists. They don't know how to manifest their. That's why they can so easily get swayed into maybe something that isn't what they want to do ultimately. They can be very easily sucked into religious or some kind of pedagogical ideology, for instance. That would be a King of Swords. And so that's why I feel the most important thing for teenagers is to teach them to think clearly, to think for themselves, to question everything, to learn how to really think for themselves, not to just rote by rote memorize facts and figures.
Yeah.
And also, of course, their social life. But we have to go through this over and over again. We get an ideal, we get a fervor. I mean, this book I was a teenager. I just did it as not having a clue what it was going to be like. Where am I going to go to college? What is this going to be for? Why am I doing this? Nothing.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. The fire chapter was really, it just shifted a paradigm or a framework of thinking for me about challenges, right? And so if you change the framework of a challenge to like, no, what if you think about this as an initiation to a new phase of your life? And I mean, that like blew my mind, and I think I told like 15 people about it. Cause it's why? Because essentially challenges are just initiations into newness, right?
Yeah.
So that was really beautiful to me.
I'm so glad to hear that. And fire, of course, is this element of destruction,
yes,
as well as igniting. And I remember one of the sentences in the book was igniting stillness when I was talking about fire. And I thought, that's so interesting. What an interesting idea, rather than emptiness, the Zen kind of, wow, we could ignite stillness by saying, okay, I'm really sick. I'm really in pain. Now what? And you're detoxing, or you're growing in compassion, or the sky's the limit with these incredible challenges if we do change our minds about them.
Yeah, I plucked a quote from your book, particularly you're talking about pain. And you write, everything shows up as an ally in our lives, even if it sometimes seems that can't possibly be so. And just kind of to your point, Celine and Winslow, what you're saying is, it's just so powerful. You have this whole section about how you had Lyme disease.
Oh yeah.
And the way you kind of navigate that, it sounded just awful. And to see that perspective of how can I turn this around? How can I make this thing that we so often fear and do everything we can to avoid, but inevitably happens to all of us? I mean, everyone gets sick in varying degrees. Mm-hmm. So like, how can we flip this around? And it's just such a powerful anecdote in how to do that and how to transform it, right?
Yeah. So
yeah, it's really, I'm so glad. Yeah, it's really interesting. And I know, as we all do, a lot of people who have had life-threatening diseases, and especially cancer, for instance. I have yet to meet somebody who says, I wish I hadn't had it. And their lives changed. It's like suddenly what was talk about don't sweat the small stuff, It's like their whole paradigm about what life is, what it's about, how to live. It's not about how to die or I might die. It's or the fear. It's about how do I live? How do I live?
Yeah.
Illness is amazing.
I also remember there was this one passage where I think when you're talking about water and you might be at the beach, and then you had this one line that was like, you just heard this intuitive knowing that the waves and water, they just want to love you. And I was like, okay, That's pretty next level for me. I've thought about it. Because I think when you're in crisis or when you're struggling or you're in fear or you're in scarcity, like, and you don't feel supported, right? But if you think, no, like the universe, my environment wants to love me, wants to support me. Like for me as a very earthy person, like that has very much helped in times of anxiousness and stuff, like, no, like your plants that you have in your house, like they want to love you, and I was like, that is the coolest idea ever.
Well, it's like pets are our greatest teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's all they want to do is love you.
Yeah.
And sometimes, my experience is a lot of my clients in relationship issues, that's all they need to learn is to let themselves be loved by the other person. It's the hardest thing to let themselves be loved. It's a very feminine energy that both men and women need to surrender to, because otherwise it's always presenting ego against ego, and what am I feeling, and what are they thinking, and what did I do wrong, or where's this going?
Yeah.
And if you can just look at it as an extraordinary gift of love in just that, you can then get to the clarity of, well, this isn't quite right, or I don't really want to be loved by this person, but it gets to on a human level too, not just on this nature level of nature, because everything really does. And we really want to love each other also. I really believe, I know that. And you see it in times of great hardship. People help each other.
Yeah.
It's only in the news that it looks as though we are all angry, hating people. It's not true. Yeah. Somebody has an accident, people swarm around and try to help, and they're so anxious.
I know. It always makes me cry. I drive by them and I'm like, oh, everybody's signing up. So did you write the book in 2018 or 19?
20.
I think 19.
The book came out in 2019. Okay,
so I probably started in 2018. It's based, I was doing my PhD thesis actually, so it was a lot of the year before. So it was a lot of research was partly in it. But of course the thesis is really boring. It's not what I was really interested in.
And so are you still doing a lot of how do you relate to the tarot now? I know do you use it in a lot of your trying to be still with clients' practices?
I do love to use tarot with clients. Yeah. And I would say I use it a lot for myself. Yeah.
How did you get into it?
We were living in Italy. I was 12, 13, and my mom bought one of those old Italian decks, the very, very early ones. And I just remember them being on, on that dining room table and just staring. I was absolutely mesmerized. And then I actually started drawing. I have some drawings of my very early tarot cards on my website somewhere.
That's so cool.
They're totally silly. They're like little pen, but they have, I like looking at them because it reminds me that this was something, I think, from very deep within me, that I just loved. Yeah. The thing about tarot that I think speaks to me, and I think anything works and everything is true and real, it's just what speaks to you. It tells a story, and I think I love story. And it's a book of symbols and images and archetypes. And it's a language that is so universal. So even, I know it's a Western modality. It was sort of discovered in Italy, but it's predicated on wisdom that is universal, like the four elements. Mm-hmm. That is that's just part of our existence of being human. And some of this is so ancient. originally Egypt. That's why they're called gypsy fortune cards originally. They came from Egypt. And Egypt had that library in Alexandria that was burned, and so much esoteric wisdom went underground. And and was hidden, and had to be hidden by these seekers and spiritual seekers, because otherwise it would have been eliminated, eradicated. And the best way to hide anything is in plain sight. And that's why they became a game that anybody could play, a parlor game. And I love that fun, the lightness of it. Mm-hmm. But the deeper you go, the other thing I love about it is that it's so animated. And I know astrology is too, and I love the stars, and I love astrology, and I know that they keep moving. So everything, it's not like, oh, you're a this and that means that. It's like in context it's so complex. It's way beyond the capacity that our brains can figure out, I think, in this consciousness. But tarot has the same. Every time it's just a different story. The same card can say something completely different, and it becomes so alive. Yeah. And I love that. They're my friends. It's not like I'm trying to see anything. I mean, I did a spread for our session today.
You did?
Just like, it's just like, here I am, and got a little bit of guidance. I don't even remember it, but it was just so reassuring. One of the things that I had to leave behind was the magician. And I felt so relaxed seeing that. The magician is such a powerful, like, I can do this and I had to this was in the place of, you don't have to deal with that. I was thinking, you know what? I'm the guest. I'm the visitor. Jeremiah and Celine can be the magicians. I just have to show up. It was, just a little picture like that was so calming.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
You have these anecdotes of, working with your clients, and they're just such wonderful pieces of, information and experiential, perspectives, and how, you couch it such that, each client is almost coming in unbalanced elementally, right? And, if it's a person who there's a lot of water, you'll try and counterbalance it with other elements to kind of get them still, right? Centered. And, the one that really stuck out, I mean, there's a few that really stuck out to me, but I think the one that stuck out to me the most was the woman who lost her daughter, her 15-year-old daughter, in the car crash. And the way you talk about how, and this is kind of referring to what you're saying earlier about being clairvoyant, it's very clear that in your work, you're creating space, you're holding space, healing presence for this other person. And you say how, you struggled with, what do you say to someone who goes through an experience like that? Mm-hmm. And almost like the fear and doubt that came outside of you, how you were able to kind of navigate that energetically with this other person in the room. And ultimately, it leads to this beautiful conclusion that I'll let people discover for themselves. They have to get the book. But, it's just such a powerful allegory. And I think it just shows your strength as a healer, how, ultimately, what are we really doing here? We're really just trying to love each other. And the best way to do that is through this practice of stillness. So I don't know if you want to reflect at all about any of your clients in that way, but I just had to, bring that up. And there's a few other stories you have of your clients that are just so wonderful.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah. I'm getting to be that more and more, is to realize that all I have to do is be, rather than advise or guide.
See, this for my work, reading your work and then having that guidance of like how to move forward as a healer and hold space for people. Like the idea that you just need to be and you just be present and hold space. Like that's what was so transformative for me about reading this work. Like, because right, you encounter people on all different spectrums of emotions and traumas. And like, I think for, figuring out, well, what do I say? What can I how do I make you feel better? But if you just boil it down to like, I'm just like here with you and like, whatever happens, I'm here. Like that's for with my work. And I think for people in general too, like it's so simplistic. It's, more powerful than anything for me. So.
Yes, because you also use hands, but also acupuncture, and you, in order to really know what to do, how to unblock, where the blocks are, whatever it is, you yourself have to be so present, mm-hmm. and it's so easy then to think, oh my God, am I doing it right? And then say they start crying, or they say ow, or whatever it is. There's just a lot of energy that we as healers have to then sort of say, no, I'm just here. Mm-hmm. This is not about me, if I'm doing it right or not.
Yes.
Because there's nothing we can do for them except be. There's nothing really.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have somebody with such tragedies, and there've been a lot of people with tragedies in their lives. I mean, it's amazing to me what we are asked of as to be human. It's just, it's beyond belief what is asked of us as human beings in terms of suffering. And we can't say, oh, you can't suffer. Oh no, you don't have to suffer. You have to say, obviously some people they can prescribe something, or they can do something.
Yeah.
But ultimately, as a human being, as a fellow human being, and as a healer, ultimately our great ability is simply to be, and to be very present, to be as present as possible. And that is, I think, empowering for them. And this is what I got to from this wonderful person, Charles Ridley, that I do quote in my book quite a bit. He does biodynamic stillness. So it's an energetic touch healing. So it's like, it's another one. I mean, when I first read his book, I just wanted to learn that and be that kind of healer. This is like, oh, okay. But it's the book itself. I forget what it's called. Stillness Touch, and now he's got a new one. But he talks about the embryogenesis, that we have this stillness before we're separated in the womb, before we become a being that is aware of the other. In other words, fending off germs as an embryo, or fending off something that isn't us. We separate, but that happens pretty early on. But before that, he says there's this still point, what does he call it? The stillness midpoint. And that's what he feels we can all go back to at any point. And as healers, when we're doing that his type of healing, he says that's what we're trying to do, is just get the other person to their own stillness. And it's transforming because it's empowering them. It's not saying, you got to come back and see me again. I can help you. It's no, you can help yourself, actually. I can facilitate. I'm a conduit, a facilitator. I'm the in-between. I'm a midwife, but I'm not giving birth to your healing. I'm just letting you, I'm there for you as you give birth to your own healing. That's what a midwife is.
I mean, Winslow,
You are. Well, you already do it. So, but I do feel also, I mean, palmistry was also it's always been such a big love of mine.
Yeah.
And what I realized was very often, I mean, even as a kid, as a teenager, I'd be looking at people's hands and it was so funny just how much I would just love looking at them. And I remember I'd just be going like this, stroking their hands like this. And they'd say, what do you see? What do you see? That, there'd be like these, especially girls, does he like me? Does he like me? And I wouldn't know, this is where I feel like a fraud. I'm not clairvoyant. I'm not psychic. I can't see. I don't know. And yet I was just mesmerized and entranced and loved their hands. I mean, and I really did, it was like it was such it was like, I don't know how to explain it. It was like reading a great poem or something, or a book, where you just, wow, look at that line. What does it mean? What does it mean? And it's like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I was 13, I don't know. I guess I could look it up for you. But of course, there wasn't Google back then, so I'd have to go home and look it up in my books. But I feel it helped them, made them feel.
Yeah. I mean, palmistry is amazing.
Yeah. Palmistry, the reason it's so, I think it speaks to people on such a profound level is that it's so connected with our physicality, with our brain. The lines on the hands, as Celine knows, are formed, well, maybe you got it from Richard's thing too. That's right. He talked about it. But they're directly correlated with your neural pathways. So there's such a realness to what shows up. And that's why I always feel whenever people are waving their hands in a news show or something, I feel like I'm peering into that. Their wow.
Look at that heart line.
Freeze the frame.
I started to kind of do that actually. And then I'm like, I'm being so weird. Like I'll like pause a show and I'll be like, interesting,
Interesting. I know.
But there is something, I remember you saying one time that it's so personal that didn't you used to wear like gloves?
Yeah.
So that people couldn't. I do. Or you do. Because it's very personal.
Yeah.
People don't know.
For driving. I have these great, in the summer, there are these really nice cotton vintage, they're like those little white gloves, but I have them in purple, violet, like a mauve, and they're very elegant, and they're very good because then you don't get sunspots on your hands when you're driving and everything. That's what they're, it's a very LA thing. But I love it for palmistry, and I don't like the plastic on my hands. I think I'm hypersensitive to the vibration of the plastic. I try to not have plastic in my environment if possible, and when you're driving, that's what you're holding on to. So gloves, I think I really recommend them. Yeah. Winter is easier because it doesn't look so odd.
Or cool.
They can be very elegant.
I feel like it's kind of a little chic moment. Mm-hmm. Little gloves on. So
yeah, I think you read so much, and this is what we know from reading hands is the fingertips, for instance, are your filters, but they literally are your filters. This is how people see. Blind people see through the tips of their fingers. It's not like, again, it's not woo-woo, except that it is in the best sense of the word. It's magic. It's amazing. Our senses are amazing, and that we can see with the tips of our fingers means then, well, how do you see? Do you see? And then you can actually see people's fingertips, like your druid's cap fingertip that you have, Celine. So we know something about you, about how you filter the world just because of that one little fingertip.
Yeah.
So all this stuff I feel really is very grounded. And that's why I love the fact that you, Celine, are an earth person, because I feel as though it's so essential to realize that this is not up in the air. This enlightenment and divine and source and angels and all this, it's not out there. It's in us.
Yes. It's in us. Yeah.
There's
It
no
is.
separation. I had the most incredible astrological reading a couple of years ago I've done astrology for 100 years or more. I mean, I've always loved that too. But this was galactic astrology.
Wait.
And it's this guy, I got the reading from this person in New Zealand called Grayham Forscutt. And it's a whole I feel like it's an underground movement around the world of these people who talk about galactic astrology, which takes you way back to all your past lives, way into all your limitless future potential.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Really?
Yeah.
Galactic astrology.
His website is galacticastrologyacademy.com. And I never talked to him or anything. I just paid, and he sent recordings of all my past lives and my future lives and my current lives and the charts.
I'm doing it.
Based on my birth.
I'm doing it. Doing it tomorrow.
I know what star I'm from now.
Where? Tell me. Or you don't have to share.
Well, this is what made me think of it, was something I was just saying about it's all within us and we're all one, because according to him, and I do have a very, very healthy dose of skepticism.
Sure.
I'm very interested, but I certainly wouldn't say you have to do this. You'll find out the truth about something. I mean, again, this comes from within. This is your own. And what I love about him is he gives you the facts of your birth chart, which shows all this long view, which to me makes complete intuitive sense that he could do that. And then he sends you to a ton of research if you want to go deeper to find out more about those different stars or whatever. It's up to you. And I love that empowerment. So I just want to preface it with that. But what he says is that I come from this constellation that we all know actually, Orion. And when I tell people who are into this galactic astrology world, they go, "Oh, they had a very dark history." Oh. And so, of course, I did some research because I don't, look at me, I'm not, wow, no.
Look at me.
But what was interesting is that it's more about the duality and being comfortable with duality. Ooh, and I found that very interesting. So it's not good or bad or right or wrong or the fight of the Star Wars, this or that. It's more becoming conscious through separation. And I felt an incredible peace in myself around loneliness, for instance, like a lifelong experience, a lot because we traveled so much growing up because of my wacky parents, which, wonderful as they were, it's not easy to be a child of that kind of energy. I don't want to say it was peaches and cream. And an amazing loneliness. And suddenly I realized, oh, wait a minute, I have a tribe. I have a tribe not just out there in this one star, Rigel, but on this planet. There are plenty of us. And we all understand each other, even if we don't know each other. I don't even have to know that they're my fellow people. And then it was so funny because then that same year, there's this very interesting woman in Scotland. I haven't met her, but she's a and you wanted to talk about elementals. She's my go-to for elementals. Her website is Elemental Beings UK. Amazing person. I mean, she teaches you how to talk to fairies and all about unicorns, all about everything to do with that. Again, healthy dose.
Yeah, no, I know.
But I do know that elementals are real. And again, we need to activate our own frequency to be able to connect with them. That's all.
You mentioned that in the book. There's particularly one woman who you end up, I don't want to go too far into it, but this woman is, she's at the end of her life. She's had a very difficult life. And you find out that she actually talks to elementals. The garden is her safe place. And I love the way you describe how when people hear these things or they think gnomes and fairies, they immediately are like, well, this is idiotic. This is clearly like made up. But the way you describe how seeing, perceiving, and communicating with these things as the same thing as seeing and perceiving and communicating with other people or with these like very physical objects, and how it's actually like tapping into other perceptual abilities, so like for something, you mentioned how like with animals, the way people really communicate with animals is emotionally more than anything else. And so it's like once you start to open up to those different frequencies, you can actually start to communicate with these things, and you do perceive them, and they do become real in your world.
Yeah. And one cannot communicate if one isn't separate. If we were a fairy or the fairy, we can't connect with them. So it's a double-edged sword that we have this energy of that's not real, or that can't be, or that's just my mind. Plus, there they are. And we know they are because we can intuit it. We sense it.
What do you think about if you live in a city? Like Jared and I both live in Brooklyn. Where do you think the elementals go then? Do you think they still are here, or like, I'm sure they are, but like.
Well, I lived in the Village for 20 years or so.
Oh.
And do you know that I was born in New York City?
No. A New York gal.
I'm a New York gal. We left when I was 2, but yeah, I was there. So I never, ever, when I met my husband there. My kids were both born there.
Okay.
In this tiny little apartment on Gay Street in the West Village.
Oh.
Home births.
Ooh, Winslow.
On a little futon.
Oh my God. I just got nervous. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I had this wonderful midwife. She's the one who told me about the midwife, that she was a midwife. She was not giving, she was, anyway, she was not the one giving birth.
But you were.
I was, it was just really helpful because I've used that analogy so often. But yes, the elementals are in everything.
Yeah.
And the inanimate objects, like, obviously there are trees.
Yes.
A tree grows in Brooklyn, as we know. And birds and creatures, cockroaches, everything has everything.
I know.
Has a spirit. I do feel that inanimate objects can have spirit too. And it's a little bit, I don't know if I talked about this in my book, but I do feel that this is part of quantum physics, which is where nothing exists until you bring your consciousness to it. Mm-hmm. And in a way, this idea that everything is an illusion, which is a Buddhist sort of sense of our world, Maya, it's like this illusionary world. I feel that's true until you bring your consciousness to something. And this is why a beloved object, a beloved chair, a beloved home, you're bringing it to life, and it does have a life of its own. Yeah. And I think in the city it's harder because we have to protect ourselves from too much, like open pores, our psychic pores from people around, and just energies. I mean, not good or bad, just too muchness. Yeah. So I think that's why it's harder, but certainly very present. And your home has a spirit. In Latin is called the genius loci, the spirit of the place. And I walk into my home and I say, hello, genius loci. I just moved from my other home, as you know, Celine. Mm-hmm. And I actually had a little fairy house that I sort of created for my genius loci in the other house. Okay. I had it in a little special place in my house. Okay. And they don't move with you. They stay in that house. So it was part of my farewell, was saying goodbye. And it was very, it was really sad. We've been there for 24 years, 25 years, and my kids grew up there, and this and that. But it was time. Everything's fine. So what I did was I took this house and I buried it near a beautiful rock, under this moss, under this shrub, and put little chocolates and candies in it. And so now I know it won't be disturbed. And if they do dig there, I don't think they would, the new people. But if they do, it'll be preserved. They'll know I know that whoever finds it will know this is a special little home for my little elf.
Maybe I should make an elf home in my apartment.
I was going to say, just to your point, Celine, that around the corner from my apartment, there must be I think there's a couple of kids, and on the sidewalk at the base of one of the trees, they have like basically a fairy house and like a bunch of, different like shiny kind of pieces of toys and, little animals and stuff like that. And I don't know, now every time Melissa, my wife, and I, we say, hi, fairies. Like we always like kind of say hi to it and, pick up some trash or something to make them happy. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And it's true too with, I work a lot with crystals, and it's so interesting how I have too many. It's like I can't have them all out now. I've got a much smaller house. But they're okay. They're just inanimate. It's like they have it's not like they're sitting on my shelf wondering where I am. They're inanimate. And then I pick them up and they come to life with my consciousness and my love for them.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful thing, because you can apply that anywhere. You can apply it to your body. You can look at a pain. You can look at a limb. You can, obviously another person. There's just, you could do with that.
And I find it so interesting that that these quantum physicists are saying exactly that.
Yeah.
That it's our that moment, that nothing really exists until that moment when we bring our attention to something.
Yeah. You place meaning onto it.
And experience and the thought and feeling and
not even deeper than meaning. I mean, existence. It's really like when you I had the fortune of studying some quantum mechanics in college, and it was when exactly what you said, Winslow, where literally as soon as you observe something, it either becomes or it changes. Right. So there's literally no way to measure it, because the actual effect of measuring, the actual effect of witnessing is shifting the very thing that you're trying to find some objective, and I'm putting my hands in air quotes there, objectivity to.
Exactly. And that's why I feel that whole psychism isn't helpful, because you might get a flash, and this is why psychics are 50% right, basically, because they might be right. That potential that they see in the future consciousness might happen, might equally not.
Yeah.
It's so mind-blowing to me. I find it very, very, very interesting. Oh, I want to tell you one more thing.
Yes.
Well, I just had another experience that I thought I would share, because this one's sort of a really woo-woo one. I also do medium work.
Oh,
That's
really?
another one of my things. I mean, basically, I've always felt connected and never felt separated. I hate it when people say, "Oh, my mother's gone." I was like, "She's not gone. She died. That's different. She's transformed. She's not gone." But anyway, So then I had to do a lot when I was working as a metaphysical practitioner at this place. There was a real need for mediumship. And so I was doing it a lot, practicing a lot. And in one of my meditation-y things that I went into, because I was doing a lot of practice on my own, this was so out of the blue, but I encountered my uncle, who happens to be a relative, like a distant cousin, fifth cousin or so, of Albert Einstein.
Wow.
And I mean, not relative, not an uncle by blood, by marriage, an uncle by marriage. I'm not related to Einstein, although we're all connected.
We're all connected, Winslow.
But anyway, it was a beautiful meeting. We loved each other, my uncle and I, and it was just lovely to see him. And he says to me, "Do you want to see the great man since you're here?" He always called him, he had so many great stories about his uncle, Albert Einstein, which I loved. I loved hearing when I was growing up and stuff. So he always called him the great man, because that's how everybody referred to him, to Einstein and his family. And I said, he would not want to see me, little me, that's ridiculous. He's the great man. And Conrad, my uncle, says, "No, come on. He wants to see, he'd love to meet you. It'd be great." So and I'm conscious, but completely in another world. It is an amazing experience to go into another consciousness. And we walk along. It's kind of like a beautiful villa, like an old Italian villa energy of flowers and things. And there is the great man. And he's so dear, and he's so glad to meet me. And I have many questions. He says, I mean, I don't want to just pound him with questions, but he says, do you have any questions? And I was asking him a lot of things. And then I don't have to go into it all, but at the very end, I said, "Are you going to come back?" And he looked at me and he says, "I don't think so." With his German, he had a very German accent. I don't think so. There is so much more to learn about physics here.
Huh.
Wow.
And it was,
I just got the chills.
Frequency. I know. Frequency, matter, the nature of our spiritual bodies. And he was so enthused and excited and researching. It wasn't like he was any different, but it was on a different frequency.
I have full body chills. That is just like mind blowing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
It was a very powerful, because it reminds me too that we're all on this journey for the long haul. It's not just right now.
Thank you for sharing that.
Jerry, you
Winslow.
okay?
Yeah, no, it's just like, I don't know if you could tell, Winslow, but it's just like ramifying in my head right now. It's like all the things. But wow. Amazing.
It's so cool.
This has been so wonderful, Winslow. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, I'm so glad.
I hope you had a nice time too.
I did. I love talking to you both, and I love the topic of conversation.
Yeah.
So it means a lot. Yeah.
Do you want to plug anything, or you're not in that space right now?
I think my book is good, and my website.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, I think that's enough.
It's perfect.
That's really
that's a lot.
That's all I'm doing. I mean, a lot of, I was on that CBS Sunday morning.
I know. And that was, has that dialed down? Or are you still getting a lot of? No,
it's much more peaceful. Yeah.
Just for people who don't know, you can go to Winslow's site, and we'll link it. And she actually did a tarot reading on CBS News, morning news.
Sunday morning news. Yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was really fun. Talking to people. I've met so many interesting people from around the country. And I always love that. Yeah, but it was intense.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited I get to see you tomorrow again, too.
Yes, me too. And I'm so glad to meet you, Jeremiah.
It's great meeting you, Winslow. And we hope everyone enjoyed the podcast, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care, everyone.
Bye, Winslow.
Bye.
Thank you.